I'm going to be the contrary one that is going to say that the 2008 election of Obama actually didn't help us as a movement in some ways because though it's so there's so many layers to that. I think that like it just gave this country a passive idea that it was better than it was, that it was doing things correctly, and somehow like we're so crossed up right now. Like there are certain policies that Trump wants that make sense for us. We should be out of Afghanistan. But honestly, what he did was he pulled us out of an area without, really thinking about what the timeline is for that.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, we've been there so long that it matters what happens when we just leave. We've created such a problem for ourselves since I mean, you can say forever if you really want to talk about it, right? But that's why the "Make America Great Again" slogan is one of the most annoying ones because it has no presence in reality. There was no point where America was great for all of these groups of people. There's only one or two groups of people that profited or did well because of that kind of mentality, and that's what trying to better America, where America was supposed to be this continuing goal of getting better. And I know there's some obvious fights in the beginning of our country over slavery, etc. But it was part of kind of attached to the document that like things keep changing. Things will always change, and we are not doing our job reforming those major ideas that are in the Constitution that are outdated now. And I mean, there's just a lot of outdated thoughts that we have to combat and go at real hard. Like I've been thinking about the Medicare for all thing, and I still agree with my it is not good to try to force AOC to push a vote, especially because it's not like she's the one with all the credibility in the world to bring up a bill and force a if you're have Maxine Waters come up with the Medicare for all, and then at the end of the day if she loses on it, it's not going to put her career in peril.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be truthful. Why is it wrong to talk about the politics of progressives, like I mean them as politicians as well? I mean, that means that there's some negatives and there's some positives, that they have some power. But the truth is that they would like to lock her out of having as much power as she could.
Yeah.
They
The
know
two
how popular she is.
the two things that I want to say about first one is about the "Make America Great Again." In my mind, I think is put the blinders back on. You know what I mean? Like to go back to normal and just be blind to all the stuff that's like kind of horrible that America does. You know, that's how I look at "Make America Great Again" because that's what people were doing. They had their blinders on. They were doing whatever they're doing. They were purchasing things from countries where they had slave labor and all sorts of crazy things going on. That we were mistreated, you know, here with the Medicare, not the Medicare, but the healthcare system or whatever. Everything that this country, I don't want to say everything that this country has done is bad, but you know, it's like everybody's settled to an extent, you know, instead of actually getting something that our tax dollars and our hard work should have helped us, you know, we deserve, you know, healthcare. We deserve certain things that, in my mind, this COVID thing has definitely made me feel that it, you know, it's proven that we deserve more as a country, you know, the citizens of this country. Now, in regards to the whole force to vote thing, like I understand your point too, and part of me like definitely agrees because you don't want to take one step forward, three steps back, right? You want things to keep moving in a direction where eventually change will happen, but then at the same time, it's like Trump has given me the feeling that things are going to be super more, you know, more extreme down the line. Like when the next election comes, we're going to have a smarter, maybe more sophisticated election where the person is going to be just as bad, if not worse, than Trump and smarter. You know what I mean? So like, when are we going to get these things to happen? Like, but then you'd also, like you said, don't want to force things down at some point down people's throats Because if you force people to make decisions like Medicare for all, like the public, that
They'll
is, I'm
they'll
talking
hold
about,
on to it.
they'll
Yeah.
they'll they'll oh, our government's crooked, or this, that, socialism, like, you're gonna make it worse for the next election. And so when it comes to election, more of these anti, uh, social issues, social views type of people are going to come out and vote against it. There's a lot of, it's a really complicated game of chess. And at the end of the day, and I don't know what the answer is, but part of me says we kind of have to fight hard now. But then at the same time, it's like, if you fight too hard, you might overshoot what you want and end up screwing it up even worse. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Mhm.
It's a hard topic, and like, I could, instead of infighting within the progressive thing, because that's what a lot of people are doing now. They're fighting amongst themselves, which I think benefits the centrists, and as well as the more far right people. Um, it benefits them. You know what I mean? They want us to fight. They want us to have problems in the Democratic Party. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a lose lose at the end of the day. We got to really be careful of how we approach this. I just think that the more we put the information out there, the more people decide, okay, maybe this will be the thing. Like, that's the purpose of this show, right? Like, we're out here hopefully going to show some views that maybe somebody will agree with, maybe they'll disagree, maybe it'll give them a reason to think twice about it. Maybe they'll still feel the same way about it at the end of the day, but now they have a different perspective that down the line, if they hear it from somebody else, might impact them in a way where they might change their mind later on down the road. You got to kind of like get the message out there at some point. You don't want to make them
Mhm.
so discouraged with that message that it's a complete shutdown. They don't want to. No, Medicare for all, socialism. Giving people money, socialism. No, communism. That's evil. But in reality, it's not. We're all, at the end of the day, the intentions. It's all about intentions, right? You want to help people. I don't think saying that people got to get off their bridges or whatever it is, and get a job and do this and do that, like, is necessarily helpful. That's a lot of talk. That's not helping people that can't get these jobs that you're claiming. Like, I get into arguments all day about on Facebook and Instagram about people that say, oh, there's so many opportunities. You might not like the job opportunities out there, but there's jobs out there. Like, yeah, but what if those jobs are paying crap money? You know what I mean? You can't pay those bills that you, like, they say, oh, the housing market or whatever is crumbling and people are going to be homeless. Well, why don't you get a job? There's jobs out there. I'm like, what if the job pays like $8 an hour and the person's rent, you know what I mean? They're not qualified for these other jobs out there, or the opportunities are scarce. Then they got to settle for a job that doesn't pay much. So they still got to worry about food. They got to worry about their apartment or their house, their children. That doesn't help anything. What they really need to do is like I said, plenty of times, is give people stimulus. But of course, we got this stupid discussion. It's been 9 months I think it's been 9 months since the last stimulus, right? And they're still
Yeah.
debating on whether or not
Yes.
to give people anything more than $600. That's, this is why I say I don't count on anything at this point. I don't count on the government. I don't count on, like, friends and family are the people that I count on, and the people that I'm willing to help. Everything else, that you can't do any more than that. I can try to help the community to an extent, but nobody has the resources, and what they're doing is they're crippling more and more people, which is reducing the resources to help the community. So eventually, when the crap hits the fan, we can't do anything. They want to keep production going up, right? So they can keep manufacturing things. But what happens when people have no money? They can't buy these things. So these businesses are going to suffer too. So what? You're going to keep inflating these businesses with trillions of dollars of our tax money that we can't even buy anything for? Like, it's just going to sit there. What is it? Richard Wolff was talking about what ends up happening is they're going to inflate all this stuff, right? Not inflate, but give all this money into these corporations. We can't buy anything. And then at the end of the day, these people got to sell off their assets, these big companies, which opens an opportunity for people who actually have to buy these things at reduced costs. At the end of the day, it seems like all it does is benefit the people that have the money. And at the end of the day, we're going to be screwed. You know what I mean? And eventually that cycle is going to keep going to the point where all businesses are going to be affected. So yeah, somebody might be able to buy those assets for less money. So what though? We still can't buy the stuff, right? So at the end of the day, nobody has it. Nobody has that extra money except the government. It's just and the people pocketing the money and investing and making more money off of it. You know, it's vicious, bro. The whole thing is vicious, and I don't know. I'm going off a topic a little. I'm sorry, but
It's all right. We should
it's
move on to MSNBC. We
yeah,
should talk
yeah.
about them since um so to speak on MSNBC is kind of complicated because when we talk about MSNBC, we have to understand that they have already leaned off the left-winged kind of messaging since 2015. So they've been going after a more corporate, and we say more corporate because they are a corporate entity as it is already.
Yep.
And they've gone with a much more center, uh, pandering to the never Trumpers kind of angle. So when we talk about that, I'm not sure if you want to. I mean, just to give an incidence of this, MSNBC's anchor Chris Matthews compared Sanders' victory in Nevada of last year to a Nazi invasion of France. MSNBC host Chuck Todd quoted a conservative column on the air that likened supporters to brown shirts. So it's kind of just the the attack that most of us know about at this point, which is that MSNBC kind of has a negative correlation with progressives as a whole. I actually don't even want to focus on that unless you have a feeling about that, because my feelings are kind of crossed about it. I understand where they're coming from, and it disturbs me, but at the same time, I've almost gotten to the acceptance mode. You know, I've kind of gotten to what CNN is trying to do, and I got into an acceptance mode. I know what Fox is doing, so what do you
But
think?
that's the thing because we're enlightened people, you and I, right? Everybody else, they're in their bubble and they see this stuff. Like like I've said before, my mother watches MSNBC a lot, and so her viewpoints, when I talk to her, tend to be a lot of talking points from their stuff, right? She says things about Bernie, like, oh, Bernie's a lot of that's talk, a lot of that's talk. Where's the actions, or this, that, and whatever. Bernie's had a huge influence on a lot of things that have happened recently. He's opened things to discussions where things that weren't originally discussed. You know what I mean? But a lot of people tend to watch these news organizations. MSNBC, uh, what is it? CNN, even BBC, and all these other. They're all like that. They all have their viewpoints. They all have their biases. But I've noticed, like with MSNBC, like during the last primary, there was a lot of I feel lies and deceiving things. Like they had people coming on making comments that I saw with my own eyes. I was like, that's BS, and then they push it. You know what I mean? It's like whatever for ratings, sort of like what we were talking about earlier with OAN. I feel like a lot of this stuff they're doing also is for ratings, because people want to hear the drama and the stuff within the party. They're like, oh, progressives this, they're trying to go too far and blah 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 blah, and Bernie Sanders is a womanizer, or he said this or did that, and I'm like, well, where's the proof of it? Like you guys could talk all the talk you want to talk, but nobody recants it, and when they do, it's a little statement here and there that nobody's ever going to see. It's already made its negative effect. At that point, the only reason why Chris Matthews or whatever this guy's name is or whatever went through what he did is because he made a comment that had to deal with Nazis and Jews and everything else. And Bernie Sanders, I guess maybe because he's a Jew, maybe it offended people. I don't know what to why people decided to pick this as a particular reason to get at Chris Matthews. But there were plenty of other situations where things should have been addressed, and they didn't make a big statement. Like it takes like an extreme thing to come out of somebody's mouth for them to actually make get the anchor in trouble or whatever it is, and even then it's like it doesn't help anything with the public. The public still doesn't see the viewpoint because it's barely spoke about or acknowledged. You know what I mean? They're like, well, we fired Chris Matthews. that came and went, and they still, I don't think it made a big difference on a lot of people's viewpoints towards Bernie, other than the fact that you got
I
people
mean,
there agreeing
I
with
think
it.
that has a lot. I think that has a lot to do with people's opinions of Sanders already. I think
Yep.
that this is actually a weakness that happened in the Sanders campaign is that they tried to reach out to the middle of the road too much instead of reaching out to uh well, black and indigenous people, really. So he just didn't do well enough in a lot of areas. And I agree though that that's actually more complicated because the South Carolina primary is kind of a mess hall of older black supporters, and they're not going to necessarily support Bernie Sanders. They're going to go after somebody they know, and they know Biden.
Right.
So this is me almost picking at
MSNBC
things.
viewers, right? Like viewers of MSNBC, the
Yes,
ones that
they
are,
most likely are
you know what I
MSNBC.
mean? So at the end of the day, they're already manipulated, and then they take a black, what is it, governor or mayor? Who was it? What was it Clyburn?
In
Was
South
it
Carolina, Clyburn.
was,
Clyburn is in South Carolina.
yeah, yeah. The guy who was who basically converted, like, once it created a downfall for Bernie Sanders. Like that one primary is what set the whole thing off. That and everybody else quitting and supporting Biden. You know what I mean? And I'm not mad. It
Jim
is what it
Clapper.
is. But there was nothing in my mind that was of substance in any of that, other than the fact that you had a news organization. And this is what I said before with the news organizations. If you have a voice, you have a big bully pulpit that could say, this person's bad. This isn't the way we're supposed to think. We need to reach towards the center. We need to work with people and blah, 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 blah. And you have millions of people watching it. Then those millions of people are going to tell all their friends, like, oh, I don't know about Bernie Sanders. I'm hearing all this stuff on MSNBC. It's the same thing with all of them. Instead of everybody being unbiased, they're sitting there with their opinions. Like, this isn't, to me, news. It's more, what's the word? Opinionated points. You know what I mean? It's not news. This isn't news. This isn't saying what's going on. This is a bunch of people talking heads, and we, to some extent, that's what we're doing, right? We're giving our opinion and our viewpoints, but at least we're going on both sides of the table. We're talking about right wing, how they do things and how it affects the public, and we're also talking about Democrats as well, right? At the end of the day, that they're all have their lobbyists and their influences that make them do what they're doing instead of being neutral to the whole thing.